Hi again and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a video to talk about mental health awareness or the lack thereof, especially as a conversation for the Bahamas. What prompted me to talk about this was, again, not just because there has been a lack of this conversation, but also because I myself am starting to struggle, and that's been manifesting for me in the form of anxiety and a little bit of depression. There is so much uncertainty going on right now. A lot of us really don't know what's to come next. And I think that in that breath of uncertainty, yes, some of us have our faith that we hold on to, but it's still difficult not to hear your internal cries. And this goes for both people that are introverts and ambiverts and extroverts. I think everyone in some sort of way is somewhat being affected, mentally speaking, emotionally speaking. Number one, the uncertainty of the times, the uncertainty of the disease, and how that's going to affect us as Bahamians who rely primarily on tourism as our number one industry. You know, it is what stimulates our economy. But I feel like a lot of people too just really don't know what's gonna happen next. And in some ways, we've lived this script where, of course, life is unpredictable. We all know that. But how many of us actually acknowledge the fact that we really don't know what's gonna happen next, and we're all just kind of repeating a cycle: wake up, go to work, go by our baby daddy, or I don't know, a sweetheart, or whatever Bahamian people be doing on a regular basis. But we've just been on this hamster wheel and we called it life. But in reality, of course, none of us ever knows what the next thing is going to be. And I think COVID-19 has kind of perpetuated that and hammered that in. And I think a lot of us might be struggling with that and not really vocalizing it. But I have been seeing a display of that uncertainty manifest in what people have been doing on social media. One such case is the young lady that I think she was joking around, saying that if, you know, this situation didn't improve, she would have to start robbing people to support herself. Because, well, her business relies on the possibility or the ability of persons to walk up and purchase from her business. So I feel like that is an example of our inward walls pushing outward. So the things that are going on inside of us manifesting in an external sort of way. And for her, comedy or whatever might have been her way of dealing with it. And it just kind of went, I guess, a little bit wrong from the perspective of government officials. You know, they said what they had to say about it. We're not going to get into that too much. But I've also seen people saying things like they're seeing things, like they can't sleep, they're having recurring nightmares. And I think that all of that on some levels has to do with that feeling or that breath of uncertainty of the times. From a spiritual perspective, though, I will admit that what is happening on a large scale, I feel, is a lot of people are now being forced to face themselves and the parts of us that we kind of packed down and we buried away and we never really addressed, you know, the trauma, the what ifs, the concerns and fears. But now that you're not able to deflect or avoid what you were thinking or dealing with, you're now facing that from a spiritual perspective. It's manifesting and it's showing up in the form of nightmares or recurring dreams or whatever. So I think in a lot of ways too, we are experiencing healing. Healing is actually happening, but it's happening in the form that healing normally does. Exposure comes before expulsion. So we kind of have to expose to ourselves the things that we've not really exposed or addressed over the years of our existence in order for us to first expose it, aka become aware of it, then face it, acknowledge it, and then kind of work through, which could for some people be a very, very long and tiring process of actually healing from those things. So let's get back on it. Mental health. Number one, I think mental health or topics of mental health is extremely taboo, not just in Black communities, but also in the Bahamian community. I feel like a lot of us, we don't discuss it. We just attribute people that have experienced probably a break in psychosis, aka losing their mind or having gone crazy in slang or layman's terms. I think we attribute it, we say, oh, they're just a drug addict. That's why they're walking the street and counting poles. Somebody laced them. In reality, that's not always the case. That I find that more often than not, a break in psychosis is usually how people get on the drugs on the streets, just because they're not necessarily in their right mind. Some of the things we see in our Bahamian communities with people walking the streets is a result of drug abuse. Yes, we are aware of that, but also it could be drug abuse in conjunction with a mental illness, whether that mental illness started as a result of abusing drugs or some other trauma. I think it is important that we just identify, or rather acknowledge, that mental health still is a part of why they are walking the streets and counting poles, as we say here in the Bahamas. Excuse me one second, you guys, because I have two bunny rabbits, and one of them, I think I've said this before, I call her the detonator, because everywhere she goes, she destroys stuff. And so she's in my other room making noise, and it's annoying the hell out of me, and I'm about to bop her. Anyway, so I just think that we need to acknowledge that mental health is something that is not acknowledged in our communities too often. And when it is, we don't speak about it favorably. We're quite insensitive, I think, and we kind of blanket everybody that has or that might have a mental problem as being strung out on drugs and this and that and the next thing, okay? It's not always the case. That's not always the case. You know what I'm saying? Some of us have endured some emotional blows that really took the pants right off of us, and you lose your mind. I have relocated to avoid the bunny, but then I inadvertently ended up in another situation that's probably equally as noisy, but we're gonna have to make this work. I just kind of think we need to begin to acknowledge that mental health is something that it's not this giant that lives on the hillside that we should all be afraid of. I think there are steps and things that we can do to prevent a complete collapse and breakdown of a person's mental state. But a lot of that will be in actually first acknowledging that mental health is an issue, especially amongst Black communities. And also two, you need to know what to look out for. But if we're not talking about it, then you can't even know what to look out for. And so I myself have battled with depression for a very, very long time. I managed to heal. And I know the professionals out there will probably say, well, did you go and get professionally diagnosed? No, I did not. But I know what I felt, and I know the extension of the time frame that it existed for me, as well as some of the thoughts that were very interwoven with that state of mind. It seems very likely that I was in a bout of deep depression for me. Yeah, I know that I had a serious problem, and if I had not done what I did, I don't know if I would be where I am today, especially the mental state that I'm in today. So it took a lot of work, and it was a very spiritual journey, and that spiritual journey allowed me this opportunity to kind of reconnect with my divine. And also, it was not a quick process, I will say that. It really did take an extremely long time. I had to do a diet change, as in the foods that I was consuming, as well as a a mental diet change, the things that I was consuming through my eyes. I had to kind of step out of some friendships and relationships that I had at the time, just to kind of heal. And again, it was not an easy process. And I'm blessed in that I am still a fighter. But also too, I believe in knowledge. I believe that knowledge really is the crux, so to speak, to shifting paradigms in our world. So, add that with my background of just having faith and believing in God and being in a relationship with God. That kind of really helped me maneuver through one of the most difficult periods in my entire life. But in saying that, I found myself a few days ago just feeling very out of rhythm with who I was. And I knew something was off because my sleeping pattern and habits began to change. So that's what kind of prompted me to do this video. The conversation needs to be had. I am not a professional. I don't have a degree in psychology. I did some psych classes in college. I've read books about psychology and understanding the human mind, but I'm not a professional. So I'm kind of like probing and poking at the professionals within the Bahamian community to do something, to say something, offer us a line and a life buoy or a life buoy, so to speak, so that we can not only broach the conversation, but we can also destigmatize mental health and actually pay attention to the possibility that a lot of people might not be well or might be on the verge of mental issues developing at this time within our community. So earlier I had started to talk about this being true for introverts, ambiverts, extroverts. And I say that because all of us have these pseudo rhythms that we think is the norms for our lives. And having been abruptly torn from that, I think it's really gonna be difficult. But if we don't have the platform or the social movement to say it is okay to not be okay, mentally speaking, I think it's going to cause an even greater issue once the COVID-19 pandemic has passed us. We're gonna need to be able to say, I need therapy, without people feeling afraid that, oh, I said I need therapy, and maybe my brother, cousin, friends, the man down the street, they're gonna think I'm loony and they're gonna judge me. So I wanted to talk about that specifically. And again, I'm probing and hoping the professionals within the Bahamian communities that do have the professional, platform, or know the articulation of words, etc., from a deep knowledge and training perspective, can do that. There is a deeper issue inside of the Black communities as well. Men can't be perceived as weak. Regardless of your sexuality, there's always this, you have to be strong and together. So you are not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to be broken. You're not allowed to not be all right. That being strong all the time thing will kill you. So yeah, I think we need to discuss this. I guess I'm inviting you as the Bahamian community to tap in and give me some feedback. Talk to me. Let me know what you guys feel about the whole stigma with mental health. I do believe prevention is better than the cure. And I also believe that if we actually talked about this, it would be really easier to identify in persons and also pre-treat, if that is such a thing, before it gets too bad. And this also kind of leads into another topic, which I probably won't get in today, which is the abuse of recreational drugs. Now I have different opinions on that, but it could be why people do drink. I feel like in the Bahamas we have a drinking problem, and because it's the acceptable form of coping, nobody says anything about it. But we definitely have a drinking problem here in the Bahamas, but no one's saying anything about it. And I do see alcohol as a recreational drug. So I want to encourage you guys that might be having a difficult time in quarantine right now. You are not alone. The thoughts you're having or might be having, the feelings you might be having, it is not unnatural. It is not unusual. You just need to ground yourself a little bit and be aware that you're not alone. Become vocal about it. If you become vocal, you know, talk to somebody, even if you're on social media and you're just doing a random video talking about your struggles, it will help you, and hopefully the climate will be receptive to people talking about the struggles that they're having mentally during this time of quarantine in you know, the COVID-19 pandemic. I really do hope that this video was a ray of light and made you feel just that it's okay to not be okay. And if it's done that even for one person, I will feel like this video actually served a purpose. Guys, thank you so much for sitting through this video. If this video did something for you, please consider sharing it, liking it, and even subscribing to my channel. I'm hoping to produce more content on a regular basis, especially now that we're in quarantine. What else is there to do?